Welcome everyone to our Time to Restore training. This evening, we are going to be talking to you about how to make an observation. So welcome. My name is Erin Postumus. I'm the Partnerships and Projects Manager here at the USA National Phenology Network. And I am glad to be joined by David Gwynn, who is our Texas coordinator for Time to Restore. I'm sure many of you have been emailing with David lately about getting stuff set up with your sites and your program. So thanks everyone for joining us. We are recording this call and we're going to be sending out the recording to everyone by email the next couple days. I did want to start out with just giving you access to a couple of the resources that we have available for the Time to Restore project. I know some of you might be curious about the origins of this project and the details about how it got up and running. So I will definitely point you to the Time to Restore website because we have a lot of information on that page. So I'm going to stick the link in the chat, and then I'm going to show you where you can access some of that information. So this is our landing page for the project. And if you scroll down, we have a little bit of background here. But this section here is our news and updates. So that's a great place to go to see if there's any new stuff that we have for you. Very exciting that we now have our new species added for Texas. So there were 9 species that you all in the workshops we had last year decided were priority species for Texas, but we didn't have yet on the Nature's Notebook list. Those are available now, so super exciting. If you've been waiting on those, you can now add them. There's also a nice Texas-focused training presentation that David did a couple weeks ago. So if you'd like kind of that overview and background on the project, definitely check out that recording, and it'll give you a great orientation to what we're doing here. All right. So I did want to just start out with a little bit of a celebration of phenology. We're getting really close to the start of spring next week. And so we're going to be celebrating Phenology Week here at the USA-NPN, and I can put a link for that in the chat later. Maybe David can do that for me. But I did just want to share that I went out to take a little tour of my yard today and was really excited to see a lot of spring activity happening. We just got a really good little rainfall last night, so everything's kind of waking up here. But this is actually a Texas kidney wood that we have, and it has this tiniest little leaves that are starting to form on the plant. Super exciting. I also saw the first tiny, you can only just barely see that this is green, but tiny leaves coming out in our mesquite tree. This is like our main shade tree in our backyard. So it's always kind of, I feel like scared if it's actually going to leaf out every year. These are the old leaves here. But these little tiny leaf buds are starting to form. So very exciting. In the next couple of weeks, it's going to have nice fresh leaflets covering it. And then flowers soon to follow, which unfortunately trigger my allergies. I also have a lot of penstemons growing right now. The penstemons here, these are penstemon perryi. They're very early this year. We actually have had them blooming for several weeks, but this is a nice variety of open flowers and some flower buds at the top of this inflorescence, and then some little sand verbena in the background. And then also one of my favorite plants, this is a mallow. It's actually a superstition mallow, which is a butylon. And this is a closed flower. And then I was really excited to see we have some open flowers too. So this is where you can actually see the reproductive part. So we can have pollinators visiting in there. So some really exciting stuff here. And feel free to share in the chat if you like the stuff that you're seeing in your backyards, because I'm sure you all are seeing a lot of cool phenology happening as well. So today we are going to focus on how to make an observation in Nature's Notebook. So I hope that all of you are coming to us as Nature's Notebook registered observers, and hopefully you've already set up a site, and hopefully you've already added a plant to your site. If you haven't, hopefully we'll have some time at the end to go back over that, but we did cover that in a training. Was that last week? I think last week. So you can definitely revisit that, and we can send out the links for those recordings as well.
I'll go ahead and
YouTube channel.
Aaron, I'll go ahead and drop those in the chat.
Thank you. Perfect. So we are going to jump right into the actual observation. So I did just want to share how you get to your observation deck. So let me do that. And we're just gonna check out a plant that I have registered already, and make sure we're all kind of on the same page with where we're starting here. So I am going into my observation deck. We covered how to get there in the previous webinar. And once I get here, you'll see I'm actually a member of quite a few local phenology programs, but what I'm going to be focused on today is a personal site. This is where I live here on Waverly Street. I have a whole bunch of plants and a bunch of animals registered at my site. The one that I'm going to focus on today is actually an Arizona milkweed. It's one of our really cool milkweeds that we have here that is active all year round. If I actually go to add or edit plants, I can see the details that I've added about this plant. And so here, the Arizona milkweed, I can see the nickname that I gave it. It's actually in a pot. It seems to really like being in a pot, so we have kept it in there. So I nicknamed it that so I remember. I also entered the shade status. It's not wild. We do give it supplemental water, so I indicated that here. We don't give it fertilizer, and I put the date that we actually up potted it from the plant that we got at a neighborhood plant sale, and then up potted it on this date and added it to our yard. You can't see here, but I actually have added an image of this plant as well, and that's going to be showing up later on the app. So we are starting out as Nature's Notebook observers that have sites. We have registered plants, or at least one plant. And so now what I want to do is I've taken a bunch of photographs of my Arizona milkweed from this afternoon, and I want to go through with you kind of what it looks like in the context of the protocol that we have in Nature's Notebook. So I'm going to switch over to, hopefully you can see my split screen here. Oops, I just revealed something that's coming up. Okay. So we're going to start out with our Arizona milkweed here. And so as I mentioned, this is a milkweed that's in a pot. That's fine. You can definitely do that in Nature's Notebook. I've indicated on my plant registration that it's in a pot, and that it has a planting date and all that, so that's helpful. If we look at on the right here, I have actually our species profile. So this is information that's on the Nature's Notebook website for every single species that's in Nature's Notebook. And this one is for the Arizona milkweed, which is Asclepias angustifolia. And so this lists out all the questions that we have on the Nature's Notebook protocol for this species. And this is going to be pretty similar to some of the species that you're observing in Texas as well. So we have the first question is about initial growth. So I just want to spend a little time and go over this with you. So initial growth is really all about fresh new growth that happens either from the beginning of the life of the plant or after a period of dormancy. So for many of our species that we have here in Arizona, we don't really have a big dormant period. Some of our milkweeds just kind of keep growing. This one can kind of die back, and usually what happens is either the leaves all get munched by critters like caterpillars, or it will kind of lose its leaves due to drought or cold. And so at some points of the year, and you kind of can see this on here, there might be just kind of dead looking stalks on this plant. And so if we were at that point and the plant was pretty much bare of leaves and we were starting to see fresh new leaves, we could say, yes, we see initial growth. So this is, a growth after a period of no growth, like winter or drought, from above ground buds or new green and white shoots breaking through the soil surface. So we don't see this in this photo, but if this was a different time of year, we might. The other case where you might say yes for initial growth is if, say, you planted some milkweed seeds in a pot and then you start to see them come out of the ground, that would count as initial growth as well. As you can see, this plant is way beyond initial growth, so we would say no for that for this species. So then moving on to the next question about young leaves. This one says one or more young leaves are visible on the plant. A leaf is considered young before it has reached full size or turned the darker green color or tougher texture of the mature leaves on the plant. Do not include fully dried or dead leaves. So I'm going to show you a little bit of more of a close-up photo of some of the leaves on this plant. And let me know what you think in the chat. Would you say yes for this young leaves question?
Mm-hmm. Here they are.
I'm trying not to block all the stuff on here. So read through the definition again and think about, for this picture here, are you seeing young leaves? We got one yes in the chat. Anyone else think it's young leaves? Okay, we got a mix of yeses and nos. Mature leaf, okay. So this is really great. So we have a mix of responses to this one. And so I just want to emphasize that when you are thinking about the answers to the questions on the data sheet, it's not necessarily a mutually exclusive thing where you have to pick between full size mature leaves and young leaves. You might have both happening on your plant at the same time. So just consider each question kind of individually. So if I look at this picture, I see these mature leaves here, and I know for some of you in other places, like that might not seem like a very big leaf, but this is a full-size leaf for this particular milkweed species. And then we see these little ones here, and you can see that these are only maybe a quarter or less size of the full-size leaf. And they're also kind of a lighter color. You can really see that here, where this is more of a light green compared to this mature leaf. So you would say yes for young leaves for this plant. How about for leaves? So let's move down to that question. So leaves is one or more live unfolded leaves. For seedlings, consider only true leaves. So that's saying if you have this tiny milkweed that's just sprouted in your pot, don't count the little, the cotyledons basically that aren't really true leaves. But this is a plant that is not a brand new plant. So what about for the question of leaves? Would you say yes or no? This one should be pretty obvious because we already kind of talked about this. Okay, we got some yeses. Yeah, so that's maybe an easier one. We definitely have leaves on here. So we get to say leaves and we get to say young leaves for our yeses. But then for initial growth, we say no. All right, so let's move on to the next question, which is about the flowers or the flower buds. So I'm going to go to my next photo here. So flowers or flower buds. One or more fresh, open or unopened flowers or flower buds are visible on the plant. Include flower buds or inflorescences that are swelling or expanding, but do not include those that are tightly closed and not actively growing or dormant. Also do not include wilted or dried flowers. So this last part is here because for some plants, they might have buds that start really early on in the winter and they are just kind of dormant in a holding pattern. And then as things start to warm up, they start to expand. For this particular plant, we don't have those kind of winter buds, but we do have buds that are start out very tiny and then they start to grow and expand. So what about for this question? Would you say there are flowers or flower buds on this plant? Yes, we got a yes, so we got a no. Mostly yeses. Yes, so these little tiny structures, and maybe, I don't know if I can zoom in. I have a lot of windows open here. Let me see if I can find my zoomer here. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so it's hard to see, it's a little blurry, but these are very, very tiny flower buds. And this is very exciting because last week when I checked this plant, I did not see any flower buds. So I was able to report a no last week, and then this week I get to report a yes, which is really what we're looking for. We love to get that, capturing that onset of when things first start happening. So very exciting, we have some flowers or flower buds here. Now, if you say yes to some of these questions, it will ask you, okay, well, how many do you see? And that's what we call the intensity questions. These are generally a little more challenging than the yes or no questions. So if you feel uncomfortable with these questions at any point, just skip them. There's an option on the app that we're going to show you that says, I'm not sure, just kind of ignore that, and that's totally fine. For this plant, you would actually count the inflorescences if you wanted to answer this question, which does require knowing that this plant has flowers that occur in inflorescences, which are clusters. And so I actually did look at this plant today. I looked all over this plant and I counted all of these little inflorescences, and I actually counted 12 inflorescences. So if I was going to be answering this question, I would actually put my estimate or my count into this 11 to 100 bin. And because this bin is kind of big, 11 to 100, especially for a small plant like this. I think 12 is really different than 99. So I probably will put a comment too that says 12 inflorescences. That just gives my data a little bit of extra value by being able to put that in there. Okay, so what about this next question, which is about open flowers? One or more open fresh flowers are visible on the plant. Flowers are considered open when the reproductive parts are visible between or within unfolded or open parts. And so this one, I might go back here, back to our little cluster. So if you don't know what an open milkweed flower looks like, maybe we can find a picture to show you, but I will just tell you because we don't have any open flowers on this plant. I don't have a picture of it right now, but these are very tightly closed, very small flowers. When they're open on this species, they're kind of a bright white, and they have these cool reproductive parts that stick up in different directions. So really different looking than the flower beds. So for open flowers here, we would say no. And I have a lot of people in the chat saying no. So great job. If we did have open flowers, then we would be invited to answer this question about the percentage. So we don't have the ability to do that here, but I hope that you all are signed up for our Time to Restore monthly emails, because we've been going through a lot of pictures in there and kind of talking through what you would say for the percentages of open flowers. So definitely sign up for those emails, and that link's on the Time to Restore page too. Maybe David can put that in the chat, but definitely sign up for those emails. Oh, thanks, David. You even put a picture
Yep.
on there. Perfect. So that is the cluster of beautifully opened flowers on the Arizona milkweed. Okay, so what about this next one is about fruits. So one or more fruits are visible on the plant. And then this is where we actually, for fruits, we give you what we call a species-specific definition. For this particular plant, what do the fruit actually look like? And so it says, for this Asclepias angustifolia, the fruit is narrow and pod-like and changes from green to tan or brown and splits open to expose seeds with fluff. So it's very descriptive. So it tells you exactly what you should be looking for there. So for your Texas species, or wherever you may be, it'll have your species-specific definition for fruits in all those cases. So let's look and see. I think I put a picture of something that I found on the plant. Oh, there it is. So this is what the only thing I could find related to fruits. So I don't know if any of you can kind of see this, but I'll just tell you because it's a little hard to see. This is actually an open, empty capsule or pod that used to have seeds in it from last season. And so this is still hanging on. But if we look at the definition here, it says it opens and exposes seeds with fluff. And if you look at the next question about ripe fruit, it actually says it says it here too, do not include empty fruits that have already dropped all of their seeds. So don't have to worry about that. There's no fruits or ripe fruits because there's no fluffy seeds left in this empty pod. Okay, so then the other question, I guess the last question on here is about recent fruit or seed drop. This is hard to do with a picture because it does require knowing what happened last week. But let's say last week this did have seeds in it, and then today I see it's empty. That would be a yes for recent fruit or seed drop because it happened to lose its seeds while I was, sometime in the last week when I wasn't observing. So that's the case where you would say yes for this. If it's already empty when you're visiting, it was empty last week, you would say no for this last question. Okay, so I have one more exciting discovery from my milkweed today, which is at the bottom of my milkweed here, I found this little caterpillar, which is very exciting. So does anyone know what kind of caterpillar this is? And it's a little trick question because you have to remember to look at the tubercles, the protuberances. Anyone want to guess? Let me open up the chat again. Ah, Jackie got it. It's a queen. So some people mix up queen and monarch caterpillars because they do look kind of similar, but if you count the number of the pairs of these protuberances, the tentacles, there's actually 3 in the queen caterpillars and only 2 sets in monarch. So very exciting. Good job, Jackie. Okay, so I'm gonna stop there And I am going to actually transition over to the Nature's Notebook app now, so I can show you what it's going to look like to actually input the data. I didn't want to try to share the app with the photos because I can't do that at the same time, but I wanted to run through the questions with you just so you can kind of see the photos and then the protocol questions at the same time. But any questions before I do that? I don't see any questions. Okay, I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's see if my phone likes this today. Okay. Okay. Myself away. Okay, so I'm gonna open, I have my Nature's Notebook app right here. So I'm gonna open that up. And usually it'll do this syncing thing where it just is checking to see if you made any changes on the website that it needs to load onto your phone. And so I actually, when it loads up here, I'm looking at my personal sites. And so I'm gonna go to my Waverly Street site. So I have that selected already. I got my list of species. I'm gonna go to observe. And so now I have all of my plants are actually in this drop down here. And I just tap that. It's basically under where you see plants, animals, and you can see my mouse, plants, animals, and site visit details. And then the date, which is today. And then this is where I can access all my plants. If you just have one plant, it'll just show up as your plant. Or if you tap that drop down, it'll give you all your options. So I'm going to go this third to the bottom here to my Arizona milkweed pot. And so now I'm seeing that same list of questions that we just went over on the website. So let's go through and answer these. So does anyone remember what we said for initial growth? Yes or no? And if we can't remember, oh, what did we say that was? We can always tap that little I and remember, oh yeah, this is after the plant is dormant with a period of no growth or for new fresh things coming out of the ground. Okay. So we said no for that because that was after a period of dormancy. What about for young leaves? So this one, again, if we tap that little I, young leaves are the leaves that are not quite full size and they're not that darker green color or tougher texture. Okay, a bunch of people are saying yes, so yes for young leaves. What about for leaves? Leaves are, if we tap that I, unfolded leaves that are true leaves, not dried. Okay, yeah, we're saying yes. Oops, I'm trying to click it on my screen, not on my phone. Okay, leaves, this is a brain twister. Okay, going down to flowers or flower buds. And again, if we tap that, this is any flower, so open or unopened on your plant. Okay, I'm getting a bunch of yeses. So now this is that extra question because I said yes. It's gonna ask me, well, how many do you think? So does anyone remember what I said? I counted. Yeah, nice indeed. Yep. So I would pick in that 11 to 100 category. And again, because that's such a broad category, I'm actually going to go down and put a comment here that it was actually 12. Hope I can spell inflorescences, but you don't have to. So now I have a comment there that says 12 at the bottom. Okay, what about open flowers? And again, if we tap that, this is open when the reproductive parts are visible between the unfolded flower buds. Okay, that was a no. What about fruits? Anyone remember fruits? Those are the pods that are changed from green to tan to brown and splits open to expose seeds with fluff. Okay, no for fruits, and then no for ripe fruits. And if we ever say no for fruits, we have to say no for ripe fruits because you can't have ripe fruits without fruits. Remember, it's one of those overlapping categories where fruits is any fruits, ripe or unripe. Ripe fruits is just if there's ripe fruits. And then recent fruit or seed drop, we said no for that as well. Okay, so now we have filled out this whole data sheet. So you can see that. And now I'm going to say save data. And you can see it kind of blinked green. And if I want to make sure, okay, I want to make sure that I have submitted the data, I'm going to go up to this review screen up at the top and see how it says user data are not up to date. Oh no, it just blinked green. So it just took a second, but it loaded. So if I want to make sure, if I either see an orange bar that says user data are not up to date, or I just want to make double sure, make sure you go down to this sync button and just tap the sync button and it'll say, okay, we're going to make sure we're going to sync. And now, okay, we're definitely sure the user data are up to date. So now we have made our first observation, which is great. So if you want to, yay, if you want to check on it, or if you say, oh my gosh, I think I entered the wrong thing, I need to edit it, you can use this calendar and see how on the 12 here, there's this tiny box. So if I tap on that, it'll actually bring up any observations that I've entered in a list. And so the only observation that I made today was on my Arizona milkweed plot. So I can, and it shows me that it's kind of hard to see with this Zoom thingy right here, but it says that I did 8 out of 8 of the questions. So that means I answered all the questions. So if I tap on that, it'll take me back to the data sheet. And if I said, or if I wanted to say like, oh, actually, I think it was no for young leaves, I could change that, save the data again, and then it would update the data. But I like it as young leaves, that's correct. So I'm gonna stick with that. You can also go back to previous observations. So if you wanted to kind of remember, what did I say last week? You can tap on that. Oops, that didn't work. I'm trying to tap on the 7. Okay. And so I can see, oh, I made a bunch of observations last week. What did I say about my Arizona milkweed? And you can see how it says 3-7. That's telling me that this was on the 7th last weekend. And so I can see, oh, I said no for initial growth. I said young leaves, yes, leaves, flowers or flower buds, cool. And then if I want to go even farther back, I could say, what did I say on the first? Actually, I didn't say flowers or flower buds back then. So I was able to capture from a no to a yes, which is great. So that again is that review screen. Okay, so any questions at this point?
Everyone's doing a great job
Yeah.
participating here. So you're well on your way to becoming phenomenal phenologists.
Love that.
Aaron, we did have one question about adding photos. Will you touch on that?
Sure. Okay, so I'm gonna close out of my app because you actually cannot add photos on the app. And eventually you will be able to. We have a new app that's in development. We're really excited about it. But for now, the only photos that we can add are actually at the level of your plant. So if you want to, have a picture of your plant to help you remember where it is, or kind of distinguish it from another one, something like that, you can do that. So let me show you how to get there on the website. Let me pull up my observation deck here. Okay, so I am back, and just to remember how we got here, I'm going to go through one more time. Actually, I'll start from the home page just to show you how to get here. So we are starting from the USA-NPN.org site. We're going to observe with Nature's Notebook. We're going to go to this big orange button here under the Nature's Notebook logo, Your Observation Deck. Going to load up my observation deck. And then it's going to show me my sites. You should look under your personal sites, unless you're part of a local phenology program, and then you would find that program. And this might be a good time to remind people that Time to Restore Text is a very special local phenology program. So you will never see any sites under this program because what it is it's this special thing called a personal site network. So it's really made up of a whole bunch of personal sites, and it just kind of serves as a tagging mechanism to like tag everyone's data. So this is not one that you'd ever see a site under. Some of these other ones, you actually do have sites. So if you're part of a Master Naturalist chapter that has like a shared garden, you might have a local phenology program site that you would access in this list. But for most of you, you're going to be going to your personal sites. So I'm going to go back to Waverly Street, and then I'm going to this Add or Edit Plants section. And that's where I can actually add my picture. So if I wanted to add a picture, I can add one to, let's do this mesquite. This will work. So this is a mesquite tree I have registered, and I'm going to say add an image. So again, that's like a little ways down here under plant image. And then you basically just choose the file. And I might be able to find, let's see that. This was actually my mesquite. So I'm going to put an actual mesquite picture in here. It's just like barely leaping out, but we use that. Upload it. It's thinking. Might take a second. It might be a big picture. I have to reduce the size, but should add it. But this is where you can add the picture, and you can do that, and now it's there. I don't know why it doesn't show the thumbnail for this Arizona milkweed pot. It shows up in the app, so I don't know. I think the thumbnail must have something happened to it. But this one, I can see this one. And this is where I could also put comments about it. Like if I wanted to, I guess for my milkweed pot, I could add something like, this plant is in a pot. And that might help kind of add some context and then save it. So that's where you
Aaron, there
add.
are a couple of follow-up questions here.
Yeah.
One is asking, can I add multiple photos of my plant?
Nope, you can just add one. So that's the limit. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so if you are in the app, and make sure you sync if you haven't done that, where you'll see that is actually on the plants and animals screen. So I can go back over to that and show you if you want. But that's where you would actually see that photo show up.
And then there's another question asking if there is a file size restriction on the photo.
Not that I know of. I know we have an 8 megabyte, I think in general is our file size restriction. I don't know if most photos would be that big. Is that true? Let me check on that. I don't think so. I just uploaded a pretty big photo. I think, let's see what mine was. It was, which one? This one. It's, I don't know, 2.71 megabytes, and it's 3,000 pixels by 4,000. So that's a fairly large photo. I think I have like the maximum photo size setting on my iPhone. So you shouldn't run up against, I think it's an 8 megabyte upload limit, but I don't think you'll run up against that.
And then one more, Aaron, if you would like to update your photo. So say you get into the season, can you update your photo?
Yeah, I think you can. Oh gosh, there's so many windows here. So it's kind of hard to see, but you can remove here. It's kind of a funny window, but yeah, you would remove it here and then it just took it
Okay.
away. And then add another one.
And are there any restrictions on the format of the photos?
I don't think so. I think if you stick with a JPEG or a PNG, that's probably best, but it might support other formats. Yeah. But if you have trouble, I would do either a PNG or a JPEG. Any other questions about observing? Is there anything else that you guys would like to try out or see? Is anyone struggling to get a site or a plant registered?
Aaron, on the section before you move to the add a photo, there was a button on the screen that allowed you to toggle view. Can you explain what toggle view will let you do?
Was that on the app or?
Yeah, on the app, right?
I'm trying to remember where that was. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So yeah, so maybe I can go back on my app. Let me see.
Oh, and we should share with everyone right now, if you're trying to upload photos, we learned at our last training that when many people are trying to access the server, there can be a problem. So if you're having a problem with the upload right now, it could be because many of the individuals on this call are also trying to do it. So be patient there with that challenge. Luckily, we have about 40 on this call. The other day we had 130, and we crashed the system. So please be understanding.
So we're back on the review screen here where we can see our calendar with the dates where we have observed. And so yeah, this toggle view, it basically just changes between the month and the year. So that's like the main function of that, I guess. So you can go back in time. So you could go back like a long time ago and zoom back in to a different month. Yeah.
Aaron, one of the questions that's also come up that's maybe helpful right now is the issue of whether photos are required. The other tool that you can use with Time to Restore is iNaturalist, which is very heavily reliant on photos. You might address that.
Yeah. So the purpose of the photos for an individual plant that we have right now is basically just to give you a reference to help you find your plant. If you're, you want to make sure that you're observing the right tree, maybe it's one that you can't physically tag, or it's an area where you have like a perennial in your yard and you want to remember, oh, it was this part of my yard and not another. That photo just kind of gives you a reference point of, oh, this is how I get back there. Yeah, we don't actually have the ability to submit a photo for every single observation that you make. And the reason for that is it takes a lot of memory to store lots of photos. And we actually at this point have over 40 million records in our National Phenology database. So you can imagine how much data that would be if we were storing photos. We also recognize that iNaturalist does an amazing job at photo storage. And so with this new app project that we're doing, we're actually partnering with iNat. And so we're going to be leveraging all of their great powers of photo storage and allowing you to actually submit a photo, but it will go to iNat instead of submitting it to us to store. So the benefit of that is it kind of ties together your phenology data and your iNat data if you want to do that. So when you submit a photo to iNat through our app, it'll have the kind of the metadata along with that photo that says, this is actually a Nature's Notebook observation too, and it has this ID. And so, you can kind of connect them that way. And that'll all be kind of connected further in other data download tools through GBIF, which is a big system of downloading data from lots of different platforms. And then this Phenobase effort that's like a phenology specific effort to host phenology data sets from different programs. The other really cool thing about the iNat partnership is we're actually going to be using their computer vision, which is for like species identification purposes. So a lot of you probably use iNat to get a good ID on a species that you were unsure about. And so the Nature's Notebook app will actually leverage that. And so if you have a plant that you're not really sure what the species is, you can take a picture of it, send it to iNat, get a species ID back, and then have that be in Nature's Notebook. And so it will easily allow you to say, I'm not sure what this is, but iNat, help me out. Okay, I've got it. Let's add it to Nature's Notebook and then start making observations of it. So you'll be able to continue, Nature's Notebook is really all about, if I go back over here, these questions. We're trying to collect phenology data in a standardized way, which is really different from iNaturalist because what we're doing is we're going back to those same individual plants over time. And so we're able to say, last week there were no flower buds, this week there are. And so I know that the flower buds started within a week. And then maybe next year the flower buds are going to be 2 weeks later or a week earlier on the same plant. And so that's really powerful data that can be used alongside with the iNat data, which are more like incidental one-time observations through pictures. But it's really like a really rich record of phenology when we do it this way, of doing that repeated observations over time on the same plants.
Aaron, we've had a request for you to, many, and this has come up in some of the presentations I've done, the interest in wanting to have animals, birds or other types of organisms in your site. Can you show or use an example of how to add an animal or how you might make an animal observation in your app?
Yeah. So the way that you add them is the same as for plants. You can do it on the website, or you can do it on the app, and I can show that. At this site that we've been looking at, I actually do have quite a few animals. And so the way they work, obviously the way you collect the data is different because you don't know if it's the same individuals. You don't know that that's the same burden that I'm seeing every week, although it probably is. But so it's basically at the species level instead of the individual plant level. And so because of that, we wanted to give you kind of an easy checklist kind of way to do this. And so I have a number of species here of different animals. Oh, I went back to 3.1 because I was just looking at that. I'm going to go back to March 12th is the date that I want to look at. So I haven't made an observation yet today. So verdin, I actually did see a verdin. And so I would say observe. And then it asks me all the other questions that are on this data sheet. And there are quite a few for the animal. So you don't have to report all of them. You can always skip some. You can also, like, if you only saw a verdin and it was kind of flying through your yard, but it didn't really do anything, like no behaviors, maybe it was like making calls, but that was it. You can start out with like, mark all these as no, and then I actually am going to say, I did see a live individual and I did hear it calling, and there was one of them. And so that kind of is a quick way to answer all of these questions, because I know that I only saw the active adult bird, and then I heard the calls or song. And then I'm going to save the data, and then it takes me back to the checklist. I didn't see a white-winged dove. So if I say not present, then it's not going to ask me all those other questions. Obviously, it'll mark them all as no. I unfortunately didn't see a Lucy's warbler. We had one last year. I'm hoping we'll have one again this year. I did see an Anna's hummingbird. I'm going to do my cheat again where I do all no first. And then I saw one, and I did actually see it feeding at our feeder. And because it was at our feeder, I'm actually going to also say yes for the feeding station, and then save data. So I'm not going to go through all these, but you get the idea. Oh, we can put the queen in though, because we did see caterpillar today, which is very exciting. One caterpillar. It wasn't feeding, it was just kind of there at the bottom. So I don't know what it was doing. So I'm going to save that. So now when I go to review, I can see not only my milkweed, but that I did a verdin and a white-winged dove, Lucy's warbler, hummingbird, and queen. And so even if I said all no, I still get my like credit for having observed those, because those no observations are really important.
Aaron, a question has also come up about how many observations should one strive to make in a given week? Can you
Yeah,
address that, please?
that's a great question. So we would love any observations that you make, just to put that out there. So don't feel pressured. If you can only do it once, that's totally fine. The most important thing is to think about those kind of transition events, and when things are reaching their peak. And so with my milkweed, because I really would like to know about my milkweed is, when are the leaves there, and then when are the flowers available for pollinators? I want to really make sure I kind of capture when the plant first has leaves. So especially like after that period of dormancy, I might be like paying pretty close attention and want to capture that first leaf emergence. And so I might be like doing it a little bit more once things start warming up. Maybe I'm doing it twice a week or 3 times a week. And then the same thing with those flowers. Now that I've seen flower buds, I really want to capture when they first open. So I'm probably going to be going out and looking maybe even every day, just because it's like right outside my door. And I can really capture with really good precision when it first started opening the flowers. But then once the flowers open, maybe I'll just go maybe 2 times a week, or about once a week.
Aaron, another question came up about frog fruit, which is on the Texas list.
Uh-huh.
It is one of those species that can be very difficult to count, particularly flowers and seeds. So you will probably need to rely on your best estimates in terms of observing that plant. I've also, in some of the other presentations, recommended that you might not select that when you're first starting out, because it can be very problematic, particularly when the flowers are so small and the seeds are so small. It can be very difficult to estimate them. But I know a lot of people have frog fruit in their wildscapes and native gardens. And so you might want to do that. You'll just have to use your best estimates to estimate.
Yeah,
Okay.
and maybe get a hand lens if it's so tiny to
Yeah.
really
And
see.
down on your hands and
Yep.
knees.
Or if you can
Yeah.
get a picture, sometimes you can zoom in on your camera and see more than you can see with your naked eye now. So yeah, yeah. And for plants that are kind of sprawling like that, and also like the mistflower, it can be hard to know if you're looking at one plant or a bunch of plants that are just kind of all mushed together. So if you have a big area and you're not sure, is this one plant or more, you can register it as a patch. And so that's something you have to do that on the website. It's not available on the app. You have to do it when you set up your plant, but you can check a box for patch and then let us know how big is the patch. And then when you make your observations, you're kind of treating it as if it was a plant and saying, over this patch, I'm going to do my survey.
Also, Catherine asked about the where to get the list for the plant species. I'm going to drop it in this chat for everyone.
Great. I see a question about setup down on the website. I think for the purposes of getting your plants registered, I think it's better to do it on the website because we have all those extra questions in there that are not on the app. So you can add a plant on the app, you can add animals on the app, but you just don't get to answer those other questions. So you could always you could do it quickly on the app when you're outside, and then you could go back to your observation deck later and add those details. But I think generally it's kind of easier to do it on the website and then open up the app, get everything synced up, and then do your observations on the app. For animals, because we don't have those additional details, those are pretty to add on the app. And if people want, I can show how to do that too.
There are a number of people that have brought up issues of crashing or difficulty in uploading. It's probably because everybody is trying to hit it right now. So please be patient with that. If you'll make notes as to how to do it when we're all off of here and the need is lessened, it will probably go through just fine. Everybody's doing a great job, really good job.
Okay, so back here, again, this is your sites here, and then the next tab over is your plants and animals. So if you want to add, let's say you want to add an animal to your site, that's easy to do in the app. Just go to this Add Plants and Animals button here, and that will bring up this screen where you can actually add it. So just I always tell people we have a lot of ohia lehua added by mistake because people forget you have to change this drop down here. So make sure you tap on that and then look for your species. So I don't know what an animal would be that you would want to add there, but well, not the, I don't know, maybe it's this would be, I don't know. But you would type in the name of your animal that you're looking for or find it by scrolling in the list. A badger maybe? And then you would save it, and then that'll be added to your list here. You have to get rid of the badger later. But now I have a badger down there. This is also where if you've taken a photo of your plant and uploaded it, see how my milkweed, this is actually my milkweed, it replaces the default photo. So that's where I'd be able to see my photo. And then I go to observe, and now on my animals tab, I got my badger there. And you can't delete plants or animals on the app. That's another thing you have to do on the website. Any other questions? Well, people are thinking about questions. I will just put in a plug for Phenology Week. So we would love to have you join us for Phenology Week. I'm going to share my screen. This is a national celebration of phenology. We'll have webinars every day next week. We have another Getting Started webinar if you haven't had enough of that today. On Monday, hopefully you're all set and you could give this webinar next week if you wanted to. We'll have a campaign convo with the researchers that are behind three of our campaigns, including a milkweed-focused campaign called Desert Refuge. We've got our director, Teresa Crimmins. She just has a new book called Phenology that came out a couple weeks ago, last week. And so she's going to be talking about her book and sharing some of her favorite stories on Wednesday. Thursday, if you want to learn how to use the visualization tool and actually make a phenology calendar with either your data or other data, you can join us for that. And then Friday, we have three researchers who have actually used Nature's Notebook data. So data collected by observers like you in the last year. They're going to be talking about their research and what they found from the Nature's Notebook data. So you can register for any of those. You can also sign up for email so you can like get reminders about when all this stuff is happening. And then we also, if you're part of an organization, you can help us share about Phenology Week. We have this media kit. So if you have like a Master Naturalist chapter, you can download the kit and share some of the graphics and stuff.
And keep in mind, y'all, we're going to make this recording available. So if you want to go back at your own leisure and at your own pace, you'll be able to watch this. So just be patient while we get it set in the recording and then redistributed back out the link. So you will be able to watch this again if you have any need to do so. Been great, everyone.
Question about the learning site. Yes, so we have a learning site. It's available through your observation deck. Again, there's a tab called Learning, and there's a observer certification course on there if you want to take an even deeper dive into all this stuff. It takes about 5 to 6 hours to do the whole thing. The first module, though, is about 45 minutes, and that's basically the stuff we just went over. So it's how do you set up a site? How do you add a plant or an animal? There's actually a module all about the app and how to use the app. There's one on the phenophases, so those like questions that we were looking at. There's one on intensity to help you figure out estimating intensity, and then a practice one. You do have to have a Nature's Notebook account to take that course. Does anyone want to share what plant they're going to be observing first? What's happening right now? Or animal, could be an animal. Hopefully some plants though. Oh, mealy blue sage. Beautyberry. Oh, very nice. Oh, a couple
Blue
beautyberries.
bonnets,
Blue on
great
it.
flower.
Are they in flower?
The rosettes are up. I haven't seen any in flower yet, but the rosettes are up. So I have to go do a training on Saturday in person in Brenham, which anybody that knows anything about Central Texas knows that the wildflowers in Brenham are some of the most spectacular. So I'll be watching as I drive up there.
Great.
And everyone on the training, if you are not aware, all of the 29 species for Texas are now in Nature's Notebook. So I know we had a few months there where we were trying to get them in. They are now in. So you should be able to select any of the 29 species and add them to your site now. So if you're still having problems there, please reach out. We'll be happy to help you.
Ready for red buds. We have red buds blooming here too. They're so gorgeous.
Aaron, do y'all's do the same essentially that ours do here on the east side of the continent? Do you get that early initial red bud
Yeah,
bloom? So okay,
yeah. And we actually, the ones that we have here, they're actually planted at the U of A campus here. But they're actually Eastern red buds. There's
oh,
also
they
the
are
Mexican
okay.
red buds, but for some reason, I don't know why they planted the Eastern ones here. But we actually were able to tell because the leaf shapes are different for the different
Yeah.
species. So
Well, Eastern redbud is one that I put in on all of the sites that I observe from. And what's happened is, and many people know this, many of the Eastern redbuds have been bred into cultivars. And so you don't really know what you're about to be monitoring until it starts to do its thing. And so many of the cultivars that are now being planted in parks look very different than the ones we would see in the wild. We have a subspecies here. Eastern redbud texana is the subspecies, so it's a little bit different acting.
we've got a couple of questions in the chat. There's one that about setting up the site. So yeah, we could run through that one more time. If and people are welcome to hop off if you've already done that. But before I do that, Tom also asked about reviewing how to get into the time to restore projects. And so let me show how to do that. And that's specifically for Texas. So if anyone's here from a different state, this is kind of a Texas specific thing. And so if you are in a different state, just remember like any plant that you're observing that's on either that the list of 8 that's our regional list, or the Texas list or the Louisiana list, that's like you're part of Time to Restore. But for Texas specifically, we wanted to have you take this extra step so we can like keep a close eye on you and give you credit and all that and try to connect with you. So to get to that, if you're not yet in the LPP or the local phonology program, the way you can check that is click on this drop down for personal sites. If you see Time to Restore Texas, you're all set. If you don't see that with the drop down, go up to this tab, which is My Programs, and then you won't have any of these here probably. Go to Explore Local Phonology Programs, and then this is where you get to your map. If you just type in Texas in this search box, it should give you, yeah, it kind of narrows it down. So go, it's actually the one here in, we put it in Houston, it's the capital. So Time to Restore Texas, view profile, and then what you'll see if you're not in it, this will be an orange button and you'll be able to click it. But I am already part, so it tells me you're already part of this, so you can't do it. So that's the way you join it. It'll ask you a confirmation step. Are you sure, your email's going to be visible? And then just say yes, and then you'll be in it. Any last questions before we do the site setup one more time?
Yeah, Tom, what she meant is we've actually centered it on City Hall in
Yeah.
Houston. So it's the capital of the city.
I'm giving her a
Yeah,
Texas hard
yeah,
time. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No worries.
No, we did Houston because that's where you are, Dave, right?
Yeah.
yeah. That's correct. That's correct. Yes. And just so everyone knows on here, we should start to see a lot more local phonology programs popping up around the state. I know a number of naturalist chapters are going ahead with setting up their LPP, their local phonology program, and then adding their native garden sites under that umbrella so that they could administratively follow them as volunteers come in to collect phonological data at each one of those sites. So start to frequently go back to that list and look, because you may see one that pops up very close to your home and you may want to join that effort. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, so this is where if I take off that Texas name filter, you can see the other ones. And we have a few here already. These are some of I don't know if we have any master naturalist ones you can see on here yet. Just clicking through. There's one, right?
Yeah, I think Cross Timbers
Yep.
set
Yeah.
theirs up.
Cross Timbers did, and we should. So we've got Galveston doing it right now, and Armand Bayou Nature Center setting one up right now. Was working with them earlier today, so should start to see a lot more pop up around the state.
And TWU had a site. The person that was administering it passed away. They're reflecting on whether they're going to restore that site, and having David come and visit them at the Texas Wildflower Day on April 25th. He's making a presentation for TWU and their celebration of Texas Wildflower Day that may encourage them to step forward with volunteers and make that site come to life again.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to go back now to show how to set up a site. So if anyone doesn't want to see that again, feel free to hop off. And thank you so much for joining us.
Becky had a question whether we're
yeah.
supposed to be a personal site or a Time to Restore site or both.
Yeah, so when you are on your observation deck, if you are part of the Time to Restore Texas, you won't be able to see any sites under Time to Restore Texas. It's going to be a personal site. If you're part of a local phonology program that's part of a Master Gardener or Master Naturalist chapter, then you might see that in the list and you're part of that. But yeah, if you are Time to Restore Texas, this is always going to be blank. So there's no sites to set up under there. So always go to personal sites.
Okay. So let me ask a question a different way. We do not have an LPP right now. Would it be to our advantage to set up an LPP and have multiple sites underneath it that would have not only the Time to Restore project, but would also have the individual gardens that we work at or the nature centers that we work at, like we're at the Lake Louisville Educational Learning Area. We're at
Mhm.
Green Acres Farm. We're at other sites like Clear Creek Nature Center. We have people there all the time that are there walking or hiking or touring or leading or educating, and they may want to take observations at those sites. How
Yeah,
do you
so
recommend we set
in
it up?
in general, a local phenology program is best for a place where you're going to have more than one person observing on
Yeah.
those plants. So if you have like a shared garden and you want to have like 3 observers doing that site, then yes, set it up as a local phenology program because we don't want to either have like 3 people that make the site, it's the same site, but it's 3 different sites.
Yeah.
And we also
Yeah.
don't want to have people sharing a login to collect data. We want everyone to have their own account. So that's a good scenario for a local phenology program. If for some reason you wanted to have a personal site network, which is what we have for Time to Restore Texas, you could. I think the main benefit is, you're able to kind of see who's in your local phenology program and how much data they've submitted, and kind of keep track of them that way. But if you are only doing shared sites where it's multiple people submitting data at the same plants for the same plants, just set it up as a regular local phenology program.
And Tom, I'd be happy to have that conversation. We don't want to get too far away from our topic at hand here, but I'd be happy to have that conversation with you again
Yeah,
about
let's
the
let's
benefits
let's
of
do that
an
really
LPV.
quickly. Let's do that really
Yeah,
quickly because we want to
yeah.
use the best process to get what you need, but also we do have
Understood.
about 60 people
Understood.
that have
Yeah,
volunteered, so there are people
yeah.
all over the place here.
Understood. Yeah, we'd be happy to have that conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, Aaron.
Okay, so let us go to, okay, so I'm under personal sites. And so the way that I add a new site, this is for Time to Restore Texas, is this add a new personal site. So that link here. And when you get to this screen, there's a few different options for kind of getting this out of the way, getting to the location where you are. You'll have to give it a name first. So you might say, like, I'm just going to put test site so I remember to delete it. But you can put like my backyard or your street or your neighborhood, or if it's a park near your house and you want to use that, whatever will help you remember. You can type in your address or you can use the map. So you could like double click in here, and then, get all the way in if you wanted to. And then actually move the pin. Maybe it's like, oh, I'm going to do this park or whatever that is there. Probably not a park. Or you can, and it'll kind of put in an address here, or just type in your address. So I could say, I could put in our work address here, which is actually in Tucson. And so if I type in an address, then it automatically puts a pin. And then I could say, oh, actually, I'm going to move this little pin. It's actually like this little area here with some plantings. So you can move it exactly where it is. And then you want to make sure that you go down to the bottom and say create site, and that'll set it up. There's some additional questions here that you're welcome to answer. They're optional, but there's some questions kind of about your site and the degree of development and that kind of thing. But if you create the site, then it will think about it for a minute, and then it says site was successfully created, and then I have my test site. And it won't have any plants or animals at it, obviously, so then you would go to add or edit plants, and then you would find one. So let's see if we can find the new bonnet by that name. Oh, here we go. So we do, again, have some different names for the species. So you might know it as Texas bluebonnet. We call it Texas lupine. So just remember, like, common names can be really different. You might want to search for scientific name. You can also reference that spreadsheet that David shared because we have, in a couple cases, different scientific names. There's like multiple scientific names that are accepted. So then you would click on that. It'll give it a nickname. You could say like, no way, it's the blue bonnet. I'm going to call it blue bonnet 1. And then if it's a patch, you can say that. If it is, then it'll ask you, how big is your patch? You can say in feet or meters. I'm going to say, no, it's just one little blue bonnet. I could say something about the the shade status. Maybe it's wild. This is one that just came up in this park that I'm monitoring at, or maybe I planted the seeds. It's not wild. And then I do give it water. I don't give it fertilizer. Ignore that because they're not separate. And then you could, if you have the planting date, like for the seeds or the plant, you can put that in. And then save. And then you have it here. So then if I go back to my observation deck, then I can see it there. And so now when I go to the app, if you haven't used the app before, just use your same login details, and then it'll just show you your site with your plant right in the app. If you don't see it, make sure you use that sync button that again is at the bottom of the review screen. Any questions about that? Is there a site for each plant? No, actually, usually no. If you are monitoring a site like your backyard, any plants that you have in your backyard are part of that site in most cases. It could be that you have a plant at your house and then you have a plant a couple blocks away down the street at a park and you want to monitor both of those. I would probably set those up as separate sites. Also, if you have a really big yard and you have like really different, what we call microclimates, where maybe it's like a shaded wooded area and then you have a big open meadow, like by a pond, those are pretty different. You might set those up as separate sites. But for most people, you're just going to have one. How long does it take to think? It should be pretty quick. I guess if you're going from computer to phone, then yes, go on your app, go to that sync button on the review screen, and you should see things show up immediately. If you enter things on your app, on your phone, and then you go to your computer, sometimes it takes a little bit longer to see the changes that direction. They just have to get from the phone into the database and show up in the app, which is a little bit longer. But usually within 30 minutes or so, you can always try like refreshing on your browser, or you can try like logging out and logging back in, and sometimes that'll like activate the changes quicker. It's kind of a caching thing. Another question?
Great job today, y'all. That was really good interaction. I could really tell people were really stepping up and really making the observation and learning how to do that process. So great job.
David, could I ask a question of the group that's on the phone right now?
Sure.
After each of these training sessions, either you or I, or both you and I and Aaron have sent out a meeting summary of what we learned, for the most part, highlights and the links and the where to get more information and more resources. We were asked tonight about a plant list, and that's been in the links that we've sent out in the past. Is everyone getting those emails, or are they going into space and no one's getting them? But
Yeah.
are you receiving updates from David and Tom
Yeah.
and Aaron?
If you, Tom, so if you have given us your contact information and indicated that you do want to receive it, information, you're getting an email. So if you registered for one of the trainings, you're getting an email. If you've gone another step and actually signed up to receive ongoing information from us about time to restore, you're also getting an email through our somewhat monthly newsletter. So you're getting hit based on the amount of information that you've asked to receive. So we're trying to. I know, Tom, you've been sending out stuff, so we're trying to limit how much is. So I've been trying to be careful about chapters that have their own communication networks to try to not have them individuals be hit so much. So there is a bit of reasoning that we're trying to go through here, but you should be receiving all information that you have registered or indicated you would like to receive.
Okay, so in summary, if you attended a training session by Aaron and Dave, you're on the list. If you then went forward and signed up for the newsletter, you're on the list. And if you told Tom you wanted to be involved in this at the Elm Fork chapter, and we had some, I think most of our Elm Fork, but I've got about 60 people that I send a note to, and I tell them, where to go find the certification course, where to go find the plant list, where to go to get on this course tonight, where to go to celebrate Phenology Week. And my question of the people on the phone here, um, Becky, David, Fran, Jan, Kathy, Marilyn, Shannon, Sherry, Susan, are you guys receiving emails from Tom, or is it too much, too little, just enough? What do you need to make this work for you? Okay, so Fran says that you are getting emails from me. Okay. Dave, I'll coordinate with you before we to meet your objective of not too much email. I usually do.
Yeah.
I'm a project manager for this project, so I'm following the excellent project management teaching that I got from Becky Bertoni, where she sends a
Yeah.
notice out once a week and kind of says, "Here's where we are," so or what we did
Yeah.
this week. So that I'm trying not to do more than that. But
Yeah.
in startup, I've
We
done
Yeah.
a
Yeah. We
couple.
just recognize right now there's a lot of barrage coming, and
Yeah.
we're fearful and trying to be very careful that you're not getting so much that you quit reading the information. That's what we're
Yeah.
trying to be very careful about, particularly when it's new information. We're trying to be mindful of that and try to put it into, as the training start to ramp down and we transition into more data collection efforts, you'll start to see a more regular flow and less of the um,
So we also got
increased
a
emails.
question from one of the people that we have a chapter meeting on the third Thursday of each month. And the request has been made for us to gather together after that chapter meeting and kind of get a pulse of where are we? Do we start? Yes or no? Have we recorded anything? Yes or no? Does anybody have any problems that we need to resolve? Yes or no? So we'd like to do that, and I will set that up. Um,
Very good.
I
Thank
will
you.
invite you, David, if you ever want to
Um,
dial into us,
yeah.
we can bring you in anytime you want to join us.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that invitation. Great job, everyone. Are there any other questions about making an observation and doing that part of Nature's Notebook?
Kathy Cox
Yes,
had
Kat.
one more question.
Yeah. So yes, if you're going to be uh observing at a local phenology program like a Master Naturalist shared garden, you can set it up as a personal site, and then once that program gets set up, you can move that site with all of its data into a program.
Great question.
Yeah, it's actually when you set up a local phenology program, we assign an administrator. That's the person that requested. Although we can also add other administrators, and those are the people that can move the personal sites into a program. Or we can do it on our end, but the administrators have the controls to do that on their end too.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks all. It was great. You did a great job on all the questions on the data sheets,
Yeah.
and seems like everyone's on their way to observing. So thanks for joining us this evening.
So just to be clear, the signal is go. Go forth and observe.
Yes,
And spring is springing upon us here in Texas with the rain and the hot temperatures this week. Things are about to explode.
excellent.
Not things, plants are about to explode.
Awesome. Well, have fun, and thank you so much for participating.
Thank you.
All right, have a good evening. Bye.